Alright, so Viraj and I are going to be talking about global capitalism and free market economies.
Oh.
Click this. Okay. Alright, so first of all, let's start with the Oxford Dictionary definition of capitalism. An economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit, rather than by the state. Basically, the goal of capitalism is to get profit. So, we're going to talk about a few systems of capitalism, but there are many more than what we're going to be talking about. So, first we'll talk about dead. Okay.
Tell him you're going first.
So first we'll talk about mercantilism, and this was not the first, but an early form of capitalism in the 16th century, and it was dominant in Europe from around the 15th to the 18th centuries, and it later dissipated around the 19th or the 20th. Basically, this form gave military security to the countries that were using it. Basically, they were able to control their competition, and they were able to protect the allies that they traded with. Also, I promoted a balance of trade. I'll explain that a little later. I have two pictures that'll help you understand that a little more. But just remember, it's a balanced trade with mercantilism. And also, one policy of many that was used in this system was the banning of gold and silver for trade so that the country's currency could circulate. And that would give them an economic advantage. So, next slide. So, first we'll talk about, this is one form that we've seen, the Spanish-French trade. This is where I was talking about how it's balanced. You see $500 worth of sugar would, for example, go to France in exchange for $300 worth of cloth and $200 worth of gold and silver. Not only was it balanced, but it gave both of the countries resources that they needed. And then this is another one we've seen, the triangular trade that we talked about with the Columbian Exchange, and we've read in Fareed Zakaria's book. So basically, it starts off with African countries sending shipping slaves over to the Americas, in which they would sell them and get profit, right? Then the Americas would use those slaves to harvest crops like tobacco, sugar, cotton, crops, different foods, that they would send those raw materials to Europe and sell them for a profit. Then European countries like Britain would then manufacture those goods that were from the Americas in their refineries and send them back to Africa and sell them there for a profit. So you can see that this triangular trade gave all these countries an equal, well, not equal, but all the countries received a profit from this. That's what I was talking about, how capitalism gave you a profit. That was the goal. Now, we'll also talk about our modern Western system. It's the social market economy that we have here in the U.S. So prices are generally established based on supply and demand, but the government does interfere sometimes on price formation, but it's kept at a minimal, or at least it tries to be. And you also see these state-provided services being given, like Social Security, unemployment benefits, and this system is mainly used in Western countries, especially the U.S. We do use it here, and some Northern European countries. So this is just a broad overview of it. So basically, industrialized, the first world countries tend to use the non-industrialized ones, the third world, as their cheap labor to lower their expenses and get a profit margin. Basically, those jobs from, let's say, for the Americas were sent over to China, for example, and because there were lower labor costs in China, they would be able to buy those goods from China at a lower cost and gain profit when they sold them in the Americas. And that profit would give them an economic advantage because those companies were able to gain more and more profit as it continued. So now, just in short, early capitalist ideas provided both military security for the competition that they had, the competing states, and they were able to help their allied countries that they were trading with, and it also provided a balanced trade. but with the occasional strict intervention that government would interfere with the price formation. But that contrasts to modern structure where it's a bit unbalanced because developed countries would use the undeveloped countries as a cheap labor source so that they could gain their profit. And because of this, the West was given an economic advantage, and they were able to rise because of it. And it was also in part because of colonization and slavery. Colonization because, for example, Britain was able to colonize India, and they would use their labor source and their lands to get, let's say, opium and sell it to China for profit. And also slavery, like we've seen in the triangular trade picture that I showed you, that the Americas would use those slaves from Africa to gain profit when they sold their cheaper goods to the Europeans. So that's more bibliography for my part. Now we'll get to Raj.
I'm going to stop this for right now.
3 topics, and it's going to seem kind of out of order because we already did the conclusion. But anyway, okay, so my first topic was the northern and southern division. So capitalism can often lead to inequality for those who have a greater advantage over others. This is a term known as the northern-south divide. The conception is that northern countries can take capital or wealth from less advantageous civilizations to earn more money. For example, the USA during the Industrial Revolution, where the North manufactured products and gained more money by using resources from the South. Now, on a more global scale, Great Britain used India's and China's resources and became the dominant power. Nowadays, however, this term is inaccurate, since countries such as Brazil and Australia, who are situated in the South, have an above-average GDP, or gross domestic per capita, above average. I already said that. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so the next topic is free market economies. So a free market economy is a market where the price of products and services are determined by their supply and demand, by the owners. Wages will fall if the population is high because the frequency of skilled labor will be higher defined. Conversely, wages will go up if the population decreases because the amount of skilled labor will be less frequent. Now, another principle is laissez-faire. Now, laissez-faire is a principle where the government does not exert any pressure on private businesses. This is the omission of taxes, subsidies, tariffs. For example, the country Monaco in Europe has no taxes whatsoever. Alright, so for my final topic, I'm doing socialism. So socialism relates to capitalism because it's been a rival in some respect to capitalism for many years. The main principle is to put the control of product distribution and exchange to be owned by the community rather than a single wealthy entrepreneurs. Now, the overall effect of socialism is that it takes away power from the wealthy to equalize a community. Alright, that's it.
Totally done?
Is that good?
Yep.